unpack the logistics around that now. I'm joined via Zoom by the Health Department's Rob Botha. He'll be coordinating the vaccine supply chain. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining us this afternoon. So, preventing crime from impacting the smooth vaccine rollout is of the utmost importance. We know we've seen vaccine theft in various other countries around the world. So how will vaccines be protected once they arrive? Will they be barcoded to ensure easy tracking and to ensure that fake vaccines can't be passed off as legitimate doses?
Afternoon, Anlie, and good afternoon to your viewers. Yeah, so security is clearly paramount, and I can't really speak to the security that will be put in place, but rest assured that there will be security for storage locations as well as vaccines that are in transit. The first batch of vaccines that we will be receiving will not be barcoded. However, subsequent batches will be barcoded. Obviously, with barcoding, it does assist us to identify the product. It does assist us to track and trace the product throughout the supply chain and makes the inventory control that much easier. What will be taking place is based on the different levels of data that are provided from a stockholding perspective as well as what is being vaccinated. There's the ability to actually do reconciliation to identify very quickly where there are gaps and potential risks in the supply chain.
So government is going to award tenders for storage and distribution. Will that only start from phase 2? And how will corruption in that process be prevented?
Yeah, so there will be a tender that will be awarded for the storage and distribution. I'm not privy to it. I am providing technical input into the technical aspects of the document. But it will be an open tender, obviously awarded under the regulations of the Public Finance Management Act. And yes, you are right. It will be for subsequent doses that will be coming into the country. The first tranche will be, as it has been mentioned previously, the AstraZeneca that's coming in is going to be managed by BioVac centrally for the National Department of Health.
So excellent planning is required to protect the cold chain, especially for those 20 million Pfizer doses which have been recently secured, and to coordinate all the facets of the rollout. But unfortunately, government really does have a terrible track record. How are they going to ensure that they get this right and that they coordinate rollout along with that ID system whereby ordinary South Africans are going to get their appointments to have the jab?
So I don't think any one of us is under the illusion that this is going to be easy. It is a mammoth task, and it has already been mentioned this afternoon, it's going to require close cooperation between both public, private sectors, government departments to get this right. I think the one thing that we do need to know, and maybe the public isn't always aware of this, is that the National Department of Health, or the public sector in health, through the childhood vaccination program, manages 25 million doses per annum at the moment. So that's a significant number. Clearly, this is a much larger portion. So there is experience within the public sector to be able to do this. But it can't be done by the public sector alone. And this is where adding the private sector collaboratively into this mix will definitely go a long way to actually achieving the targets that government is actually aiming for to achieve the herd immunity that we heard earlier. Private sector involvement is critical in actually achieving this, and that's where this close collaboration between the two really needs to take place to get to this mammoth task under control.
We don't also have to just manage the rollout of vaccine doses, but the secondary supply chain is also vital to ensure that jabs that are distributed can be effectively administered. And there are things like syringes, sharps disposal boxes, gloves, alcohol wipes, all those kind of essentials will be needed in equal supply to those jab doses and to be distributed in the same places. Do we have all the systems in place to ensure that happens smoothly?
Yeah, so you're 100% correct there, Anlie, as we don't want to be in a situation where vaccines are arriving and they can't be administered because these items are not available. So clearly these items need to be in place before the vaccines arrive. There has been communication with the suppliers through the industry bodies of these items. It must also be noted that each vaccine that we are receiving will probably require different ancillary items. So, for example, the Pfizer vaccine is required to be diluted with sodium chloride solution, and will require another set of syringes in order to do that. So processes are underway to make sure that there is sufficient of these products in the country. Obviously, we sit in the same situation where these products are in demand globally now, but processes are underway to try and make sure that there is a coordination between vaccines as well as the ancillary items necessary to administer this to the population.
Rob, it's just come to mind now, as we've seen demand for certain products in the healthcare sector, and I'm thinking specifically here of PPE as well, as that demand has escalated globally, we've seen serious shortages and bidding wars escalating as a result of those shortages. Do we have sufficient stock? I mean, we keep talking about stock of vaccine doses that we need to secure, but do we have sufficient stock of, for instance, syringes, gloves, alcohol wipes, all those ancillary products? Do we have those secured?
So that is part of the process that is underway to actually understand exactly what that pipeline looks like with the manufacturers. A number of these items are already on government contracts in the country, but obviously this comes with an increased demand. So understanding the pipeline of each of these individual manufacturers to determine if we have sufficient to meet the demand is critical, and that process is underway together with, as I said, the industry body responsible for those items. Obviously, these products do also need to be registered with our South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, or they need to comply with the requirements thereof. So, yes, it is a mammoth task, as you say, and yes, these discussions are already taking place. Fortunately, there are alternatives, different sizes of syringes or needles that may be used, so it's not just specific ones. It could be a range, but it does vary from vaccine to vaccine as to what we can use and what is required for each of those vaccines.
Rob, before I let you go, another big talking point has been the fact that rural and remote areas have no generators and they don't have sufficient security. How will equitable distribution to these areas be handled to ensure that residents in rural communities aren't left out?
No, you're 100% correct, and that is critical to make sure that there's equity of supply of these vaccines. As I mentioned before, is the childhood vaccination program obviously does reach into these areas, so this is not unusual practice for these areas to be receiving vaccines. But clearly it is critical to make sure that they have sufficient volume capacity to be able to store the volumes that we're expecting. Most of these sites that do have fridges are purpose-built that have a 48-hour holdover time, which means that if there is a loss of power, that it will maintain the temperature of the vaccines for at least 48 hours. And there is reusable packaging that is being used to distribute these products to these areas, which generally can have, according to the World Health Organization approved packaging, 24 to 48-hour holdover time. So those can be used as measures to mitigate some of these experiences with regards to electricity supply in these far outlying areas.
Well, thank you very much again for speaking to us and for bringing us some clarity. That was the Health Department's Rob Botha, who will be coordinating South Africa's vaccine supply chain.